Creativity, play, and inspiration. For many of you, this is why you started down the journey of becoming a creative freelancer in the first place. Hello and welcome to Coaching for Creatives. My name is Aura McKay. I am a business coach and the founder of Business of Creativity and your host for today's episode. We are exploring the importance of creativity, play, and inspiration in your freelance business. I am curious if most of you are a little bit like me. When I first started going into photography, I was doing photography out of my own love of photography. I started exploring it because I was playing around and it was a way to access my own self-expression and to start exploring how I saw the world and how I could play with it and be self-taught with it. And a lot of my clients come to me because they had a similar journey. They started maybe in design or photography as a way of engaging with the world with more creativity and play. Maybe many of you are also self-taught. I ended up going to a full-time professional photography school, and it was there that I started to see two things happen. One, I started to see a whole bunch more access to different tools, creative tools and approaches that I had never seen before. And then the second thing happened was I started to be more intentional about the process of my creation. I remember when I used to teach photography, I would have people come into my intro to photography classes, and they would come in excited about their cameras, excited about photography. And it was almost like the more that they learned about their cameras and image making, the worse their photography got. The more they started thinking about the process of creation, the more they started having to make technical decisions or think specifically about things like lenses or apertures or exposure or composition. It's almost like those specific instructions squished their creative expression. And I see this happen a lot with my clients who's come to me for business and marketing. And the more we start looking at the business of being a creative, the more it can squish or limit the ability to just create for the sake of creativity. This is a natural extension of becoming a freelancer where we don't necessarily create solely for our own enjoyment or solely for our own self-expression. Now we have the wonderful privilege of creating something to have someone else's expression or someone else's brand or someone else's message. How do we as creatives stay connected to that creativity, that inspiration, that aspect of ideas and innovation that people want us to bring every time they hire us? It can be hard to tap into creativity on demand. And it can be really hard to tap into creativity on demand when we're doing it and it's not even our own expression necessarily. How can you get more creativity in your freelance business if you're starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed by the business aspect? How can you tap into creativity more consistently so that you can do it on demand? And how can you bring more ideas and inspiration? I kind of already gave it away. It happens with the idea of play. In our book club right now, we just finished reading The Now Habit by Neil Fiore. And one of the things that he suggests is something called unschedule. An unschedule really is about prioritizing your life and time for unstructured play, unstructured creativity. Sometimes when our job is what we used to do for escape and for play and creativity, sometimes we don't necessarily go back to it. If you can't do it through your services, through photography no longer gives you access the same way, or design never gives you access to the same way, or music doesn't give you access to that sort of inspiration and creativity, then one thing that you can do is look for inspiration from other sources. This is when I do things like I go to an art gallery, or I walk in a garden, or I go and I listen to music, or I go and look at some other, not in my own industry, but somewhere else completely, and look to see what can I get inspired by them. Play is so important. I am going to talk about that again and go back to unstructured, but I want to share with you that I was just at the Canadian Imaging Conference and Expo in Canmore, Banff, which is put on by the Professional Photographers of Canada. And I've been a member of the Professional Photographers of Canada for over 2 decades. And I did retire my camera about 8 years ago to really focus here on coaching you guys. And this last weekend, I looked at my photos again for the first time in maybe 5 years. And I really connected back to what inspired me to make photography in the first place. My urge for you is that if you're not feeling creatively connected to your own craft in the moment, look outside of your craft to get inspired and to reconnect to your creativity, or maybe go back to the basics, go back to the beginning when you were creating without having it to mean anything or without having it to have an outcome, just for the sake of creating. And yes, that is all about play. My question for you is, when was the last time you scheduled time to play? Say, what? I'm an adult. I don't play. But absolutely, when was the last time you scheduled time to play? We were just recently reading one of Brian Tracy's books. I can't recall the name of it, but I will put it in the chat for you guys. And he talks about the importance of play, of just being creative without having to have an outcome. One of the ways that I access this is I am not a painter or an illustrator or a designer. Creating with my hands and with physical materials is not something that I typically do. So for me, I give myself permission to do art badly or to make bad art. I just play with it. I play with all of the materials and I see what happens, and what does it look like if I use a crayon, or happens if I use pastels. I don't recommend giving yourself free rein when it comes to glitter, because that stuff gets everywhere. But for everything else, just give yourself some time to play. Step one is to reconnect to your own creativity and passion. Step two, or an option two, is to be able to give yourself unstructured time to play without outcome or pressure or have tos or shoulds. And the last thing I would say is inspiration, looking outside of yourself for inspiration. I seem to be a bit scattered today because this is a topic that I get really excited about. The whole reason I went into business in the first place was for an opportunity to get paid to be creative. And a lot of times I know that is your dream too, to get paid to do work you love. Brian shares in the chat, have our inspiration seeking be intentional. Getting off track in social media reels can happen fast, and we must stay focused. Be careful where you search for inspiration, because sometimes in our quest for inspiration, we create insecurity or imposter syndrome, or we create procrastination. Because I think that's sometimes where the social media death scroll or the doom scrolling comes from for me, is that I get into the scroll and I think I'm getting inspiration, but it shifts to procrastination. I'm going to be here for a while and I'm going to call it inspiration, but really I'm just avoiding doing what I want to do. And the longer I do this and I look at this stuff, the more insecure I feel and the more intimidated I feel. And so the more I procrastinate. Definitely being seeking inspiration with intention. Absolutely. But don't just seek like highfalutin inspiration. It doesn't all have to be art galleries. What if you went to, maybe there's a preschool art show and you can see just that sheer joy and no editing that happens when children create and play. I definitely recommend children as inspiration for creativity and play. Being intentional, I'd love to hear some of your ideas about where you go for inspiration. I'd love to hear what kinds of things that you do for play, or share what is it that connects you best to your own creativity. Thank you so much for joining me here live. We'll see you here next time on Coaching for Creatives. I'm Aura McKay. Have a fantastic week.